The Cursed Queen and the Human Stowaway. The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, filled with dead planets and the wreckage of lost battles. Floating among the debris was the Shadow's Wrath, a massive starship once ruled by the most feared pirate in the galaxy, Queen Electrifying. But now, the ship was nothing more than a ghost. It drifted in silence, forgotten by time, cursed by fate. The Human Scavenger. Ethan Carter tightened his grip on the controls of his small scavenger ship. He had spent years searching for lost treasures in abandoned vessels, and this ship was a goldmine. Pirate ships always had something valuable left behind. Rare metals, weapons, tech. As he approached the Shadow's Wrath, his scanners beeped. No life detected. Perfect, Ethan muttered, setting his ship to dock. He grabbed his tools and stepped into the darkness of the forgotten ship. Inside, the air was cold and stale. The halls were covered in dust, and broken lights flickered weakly. Ethan moved carefully, his flashlight sweeping across the massive corridors. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Then he saw it. The frozen throne. At the heart of the ship, past rusted doors and shattered control panels, stood a grand throne, carved from obsidian metal, the seat of the legendary pirate queen Electrifying. And there she was. Electrifying sat on the throne, her body perfectly still, her face frozen in time. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. She looked alive. Her long silver hair flowed down her armored shoulders, her sharp violet eyes locked in a silent gaze. A strange glow surrounded her, like a prison of energy. Ethan stepped closer. His instincts screamed to leave, to run, but his curiosity held him in place. He had heard the stories. Electrifying, the pirate who could never be killed, the queen who had conquered entire star systems, the woman who was cursed by the gods themselves. Her legend said that anyone who touched her would turn to stone. But she was dead, wasn't she? Ethan hesitated, then slowly reached out. His fingers brushed against her hand. The curse awakens. The air cracked. A sudden shockwave blasted through the room, throwing Ethan backward. The walls trembled, the ship's lights flickered violently. Electrifying's eyes snapped open. Ethan gasped as the once frozen queen moved. Her fingers twitched. Her chest rose with a deep inhale. And then she turned her gaze toward him. Ethan scrambled backward, heart pounding. Impossible. Electrifying blinked, her expression unreadable. Then she lifted her hand, the same hand he had just touched. She stared at it, stunned. The curse had not worked. Her voice, smooth yet sharp as a blade, filled the room. You are human. Ethan swallowed hard. But yeah. A flicker of something. Shock, curiosity, fear, passed through her eyes. How? She whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. Why are you still alive? Ethan had no answer. But before he could speak, the ship shuddered violently. Enemies at the door. A robotic voice blared through the speakers. Intuddors detcted. Hostile forces approaching. Electrifying's expression hardened. She rose from her throne, moving with the grace of a warrior. Her armor gleamed under the flickering lights, her presence radiating power. Ethan's mind raced. What was happening? Who was coming? Electrifying turned to him, her gaze sharp. Listen to me, human. She grabbed his arm, her grip strong, commanding. I do not know why my curse did not affect you, but if you do not wish to die, you will fight beside me. Ethan barely had time to react before the ship's alarm screamed. Through the shattered windows, a fleet of enemy ships approached. Bounty hunters, warlords, those who had waited for the day the pirate queen would be vulnerable. And now, they were here to claim their prize. Ethan exhaled sharply. He had come looking for treasure. Instead, he had awakened the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. And now, they were both about to fight for their lives. A human unlike any other, the ship trembled as enemy fire struck its weakened hull. The alarm screamed, the dim emergency lights flickered, and deep metallic groans echoed through the corridors. The Shadow's wrath was waking up, along with its cursed queen. Ethan Carter barely had time to process what had happened. One moment, he was a simple scavenger looking for lost treasure. The next, he had awakened the most feared pirate in the galaxy. And now, she was staring straight at him. The touch that should have killed him. Silura Xyra, the pirate queen, stood tall, her violet eyes locked onto Ethan's with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. Her fingers flexed, still feeling the remnants of the energy that had surged through her body when he touched her. The curse should have turned him to stone. Instead, he stood before her, alive and unharmed. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp as a blade. Ethan swallowed, trying to keep his voice steady. "I already told you. I'm human." Silura narrowed her eyes. "That does not explain why you still breathe." Before he could respond, the ship shuddered violently as another blast rocked its surface. A robotic voice echoed through the chamber. "Warning. Multiple enemy shippies AAP Pro-HAJang. Boarding in progress." Silura's gaze snapped toward the shattered window, where Ethan could now see them, sleek black warships hovering like hungry vultures. The bounty hunters had arrived. A queen's unfinished war. Silura's expression darkened. "They have waited for this moment." Ethan frowned. "Who are they?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to a control panel near her throne, her fingers dancing over rusted buttons. The screens flickered to life, showing live feeds of enemy troops breaching the ship. Ethan's stomach twisted. There were at least a dozen heavily armed mercenaries, their armor marked with the sigil of the Andromeda warlords. The name rang a bell in Ethan's mind. Pirate hunters. Ruthless, merciless, and rich enough to buy entire planets. Silura let out a slow breath. "They come for me, believing I am still frozen. Helpless." Her lips curled into a dangerous smile. "They are mistaken." Ethan watched in stunned silence as she straightened, her presence shifting. The shock of her awakening had passed. Now, the pirate queen was ready for war. A dangerous deal. Silura turned to Ethan. "You, human." Ethan blinked. My name is Ethan." She ignored him. "You touched me. That means you are part of this now." Ethan's heart sank. Whoa. I was just looking for scrap. Okay. I didn't sign up for this." Silura took a step closer, her aura commanding. "You broke the first seal of my curse." She tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle she had never seen before. "That means you may be able to break the rest." Ethan hesitated. "And if I say no?" Silura's lips twitched in amusement. "Then I leave you here. And when they find you, they will not be as kind as I am." Ethan sighed. "Fine. What do we do?" Silura smirked. "We fight." The battle begins. The sounds of approaching boots echoed through the corridors. The warlords were here. Silura retrieved a sleek, black-bladed sword from a compartment beneath her throne. It pulsed with a strange, blue energy. Ethan grabbed a blaster from a fallen pirate's remains. It was old but functional. "Stick close," Silura commanded, moving toward the entrance. "Do not get in my way." Ethan grumbled. "Not like I have a choice." The doors burst open. The first mercenary barely had time to react before Silura moved like lightning. Her sword sliced through the air, striking with lethal precision. The soldier crumpled before he could fire his weapon. The others staggered back, shocked. They had expected a frozen queen. They had found a warrior instead. Ethan took cover, firing shots at the remaining soldiers. He wasn't the best marksman, but he managed to hit one in the leg, sending him crashing down. Silura, meanwhile, was a force of nature. She flowed between her enemies like a shadow, her blade cutting through armor with ease. Every move was calculated, efficient, deadly. Ethan had seen bounty hunters fight before, but this was something else. Celera wasn't just fighting. She was sending a message. The escape. The last mercenary stumbled back, fear in his eyes. He pressed a button on his wrist. Ethan's stomach dropped. He's calling for reinforcements. Celera cursed. Then we leave. Now. She grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him toward a hidden passage behind the throne. The walls shifted, revealing a secret hangar. Ethan's jaw dropped. A ship. A sleek, black starfighter hidden beneath the ruins of the Shadow's Wrath. Celera jumped into the cockpit. Get in, human. Ethan didn't hesitate. He climbed into the co-pilot's seat as the engines roared to life. As enemy ships closed in, Celera's hands moved across the controls. She knew this ship like an extension of her own body. With a final smirk, she pushed the thrusters forward. The ship blasted out of the wreckage like a shooting star, disappearing into the void, a future uncertain. As the silence of space surrounded them, Ethan let out a long breath. Okay, we made it. Celera, still gripping the controls, did not turn to him. Not yet. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Celera's eyes gleamed as she finally looked at him. The curse is not broken. And now, the entire galaxy will be hunting us. Ethan's stomach twisted. He had thought this was over. It was only just beginning. The battle for freedom. The stars stretched endlessly before them, an infinite sea of darkness speckled with distant galaxies. But there was no peace in the void. Behind them, the warships of the Andromeda warlords were in pursuit, their engines burning red-hot as they cut through space. Each ship was armed with plasma cannons and disruptor missiles, weapons designed to destroy fugitives like them. Inside the stolen starfighter, Ethan Carter gripped the edges of his seat, his knuckles turning white. You do know how to fly this thing, right? Celera Xyra, the pirate queen, did not dignify him with a response. Her sharp violet eyes were locked on the control panel, her fingers moving effortlessly over ancient systems, as if she had been born in this very cockpit. The ship lurched, dodging a plasma blast that nearly tore through its hull. Ethan cursed. That was too close. Celera remained calm. Stop whining, human. We are not dead yet. A desperate escape. Ethan turned to the radar. 5 enemy ships. Fast, heavily armed, and closing in. We need a plan, he said. A good one. Celera smirked, pressing a sequence of buttons. The ship's hidden thrusters roared to life, launching them forward at twice the speed. The sudden acceleration slammed Ethan against his seat. Not what I meant, he shouted over the noise. Celera only chuckled. I have been trapped in stone for a century, human. Let me have some fun. But their enemies were not so easily shaken. The warships adjusted their trajectory, splitting apart to surround them. Tactical hunters. They weren't just trying to kill Celera. They wanted to capture her. Ethan's heart pounded. He had no idea why, but he had the feeling that was worse. The Queen's gamble. Celera's smirk faded as the ships tightened their formation. She exhaled slowly. She needed a better move. Then, an idea. Take the controls, she ordered. Ethan's eyes widened. What? Before he could protest, Celera grabbed his hands and placed them on the control panel. The ship jerked violently as Ethan fumbled with the unfamiliar controls. Are you insane? He shouted. I don't know how to fly a starfighter. Celera unbuckled herself, rising from her seat with the fluid grace of a predator. Then learn fast. She strode toward the ship's rear, where a weapons panel flickered to life. Her fingers danced over the screens. What are you doing? Ethan yelled, struggling to keep the ship steady as plasma fire rained down around them. Celera's voice was calm. I am going to disable their engines. Try not to crash before I finish. That is not reassuring. Ethan shouted, panic rising. The fight in the void. The enemy ships closed in, locking onto their signal. Ethan's hands were slick with sweat as he tried to keep them from colliding with incoming fire. Celera worked quickly, hacking into the ship's external cannons. Her lips curled as the targeting system came online. Good. A blast of plasma shot from their ship, hitting one of the warships directly in its thruster. The explosion sent it spiraling out of control. 4 left. Ethan barely had time to process what happened before Solara fired again, this time hitting a second ship in its wing stabilizer. It veered off course, crashing into an asteroid. 3 left. The warlords were now angry. Their remaining ships adjusted their attack pattern, switching to a coordinated assault. Ethan watched as the screen lit up with dozens of incoming missiles. Solara. He called out, his voice trained. We have a problem. She returned to the front seat, her expression unreadable. Only one. More like 30. She glanced at the radar and smirked. Good. Ethan stared at her. How is that good? Solara did not answer. Instead, she flipped 3 switches and pulled the ship into a sharp nosedive, heading straight for a nearby gas cloud. Ethan screamed, "We are going to die." Solara merely raised an eyebrow. "Not if you stop screaming and trust me." The storm within the cloud. As they plunged into the gas cloud, all sensors went dark. Ethan's stomach twisted. I can't see anything. Solara remained focused. Neither can they. Outside, the enemy ships fired wildly, their missiles exploding uselessly in the thick gas. Without visibility, their targeting systems were useless. Ethan let out a shaky breath. So, we're safe. Solara smirked. Not yet. Before Ethan could question her, she activated a cloaking field. The ship vanished into the storm. On the enemy scanners, they were gone. A moment of truth. The warships hesitated. Their commanders shouted orders, searching for any sign of their target. But the pirate queen had disappeared into legend once again. After a few minutes, the warships turned and retreated, unwilling to risk more losses in the unpredictable gas storm. Only when they were far away did Solara finally deactivate the cloaking device. The ship reappeared, drifting in the quiet void. Ethan exhaled, his body slumping against the seat. That was the worst 10 minutes of my life. Solara merely smirked. You survived. Ethan glared at her. Barely. Solara stretched her arms, as if the entire event had been nothing but a casual inconvenience. Then she turned to Ethan, her expression unreadable. You are different. Ethan frowned. What? She studied him. No human should have been able to break my curse. No human should have survived that battle. She leaned forward slightly, her violet eyes piercing into his soul. So tell me, Ethan Carter, what are you? Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. Because, for the first time, he realized, he had no answer. The warrior's sacrifice. The silence after the battle felt heavier than the weight of the entire galaxy. Ethan Carter sat in the cockpit, his breath still shaky from the insane escape. The ship drifted through deep space, hidden in the aftermath of the gas storm. For the first time in what felt like forever, no one was chasing them. But the danger wasn't over. Because something was wrong with Solara. The curse was changing. Solara Xyra, the pirate queen, sat across from Ethan, her expression unreadable. Her violet eyes flickered with something new. Pain. She gripped her wrist tightly, her body tense. Her breathing was shallow. Ethan frowned. Hey, are you okay? Solara didn't answer right away. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, she pulled off her armored glove. Ethan's stomach twisted. Her fingers, once smooth and silver-skinned, were now cracked with dark energy, like veins of obsidian stretching up her arm. It was spreading. The curse. Ethan's chest tightened. I thought I broke it. Solara exhaled sharply. You broke the first seal, human. But the curse was never meant to be undone so easily. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Great. So what now? We just wait for you to turn to stone. Solara smirked, but there was no amusement in it. No, we find the one who cursed me. Ethan blinked. Wait, you know who cursed you. Solara's expression darkened. Yes, and she has been waiting for me. The queen who betrayed her. Solara pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. The screen flickered, then focused on a distant, abandoned world. Nithra, the tomb of kings. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Dramatic name. Who are we visiting? Solara's voice was cold. Queen Asmara. Ethan felt a shiver run through him. He had heard that name before. Asmara, the Shadow Queen. The one who had turned on Solara during the Great Pirate War centuries ago. According to legend, Asmara had vanished after the war. Some believed she was dead. Others claimed she had ascended beyond flesh, existing only in whispers. Now, Solara was saying she was still alive. And she was the only one who could break the curse. A desperate gamble. Ethan stared at the map. So let me get this straight. We're flying to a cursed planet, looking for a ghost queen who will probably try to kill us. Solara gave a small, dangerous smile. Yes. Ethan sighed. Fantastic. He reached for the ship's controls, setting a course for Nithra. As he did, he glanced at Solara's hand again. The dark veins were spreading faster. She was running out of time. Landing on the tomb world, the ship emerged from hyperspace above Nithra, a planet covered in swirling black clouds, cracked landscapes, and massive ruins that stretched toward the sky like skeletal fingers. Ethan shuddered. Okay, that place just screams bad idea. Solara unstrapped herself. It is the only idea. They descended into the atmosphere, passing over crumbling cities lost to time. At the heart of it all, surrounded by towers of black stone, was their destination. The Obsidian Throne, the place where Queen Asmara had vanished. As they landed, the ship's systems flickered. Something was disrupting the power. Ethan swallowed hard. This feels like a trap. Solara's expression was unreadable. It always was. The Shadow Queen's game. The moment they stepped onto the cracked ground, the air shifted. A voice. Asterisk, asterisk, soft, distant, and full of malice. Asterisk, asterisk, whispered through the ruins. You should not have come, sister. Ethan spun around, gripping his blaster, but there was no one there. Then, out of the darkness, she appeared. Queen Asmara. She stepped forward like a phantom, her form half hidden beneath a flowing cloak of shadows. Her skin shimmered like blackened steel, her silver eyes glowing with something ancient and unnatural. She had not aged, not even a little. Ethan's pulse spiked. She wasn't human anymore. The offer of betrayal. Asmara's lips curled into a smirk. It has been a long time, Solara. Solara clenched her fists. Not long enough. Asmara chuckled, tilting her head toward Ethan. And this is the human who touched you. She took a step closer, studying him with curiosity. Fascinating. Ethan took an uneasy step back. I hate when people say that. Asmara's gaze returned to Solara. You came here for a cure. But tell me, sister, why should I give it to you? Solara's jaw tightened, because I am not afraid to take it. Asmara laughed, a sound that echoed unnaturally. Ah, but you misunderstand. The curse was never just a punishment. It was a lesson. Ethan frowned. A lesson for what? Asmara's silver eyes gleamed. Trust. Solara tensed. I do not need trust. I need power. Asmara smirked. And that is why you are still cursed. The Dark Queen raised her hand, and the air around them cracked with raw energy. Ethan felt the shift before it happened. The ground trembled. The sky darkened. And behind Asmara, shadows began to take shape. Not ghosts. Not illusions. Creatures. Monsters. Soldiers of the Shadow Queen. Asmara's voice was soft, almost playful. If you truly wish to be free, Solara, then prove it. The creatures lunged. Solara drew her blade. Ethan raised his blaster, and the battle for her soul began. The labyrinth of the ancients. The air cracked with energy. The ruins of Nithra trembled as the shadows moved, twisting into monstrous forms. Ethan Carter didn't hesitate. He fired his blaster, the red energy bolt streaking toward the nearest creature. It passed right through. The shadow beast didn't even flinch. Ethan's stomach dropped. Oh, that's bad. Celara Xyra, the pirate queen, stood her ground. Her blade flashed, slicing through the air as the first creature lunged. Unlike Ethan's useless blaster, her weapon connected. The shadow screamed as it was cut in half, vanishing into the mist. But more were coming. Dozens. Asmara watched with amusement, her glowing silver eyes unreadable. Still relying on strength alone. Sister. Celara's jaw clenched. Strength has never failed me. Asmara smirked. Then let's see if it saves you now. With a wave of her hand, the ruins shifted. The ground beneath them cracked apart, ancient stone rearranging itself into a shifting maze of endless corridors and towering walls. Ethan barely had time to react before the floor disappeared beneath his feet. The fall into darkness. For a brief second, Ethan was weightless. Then he was falling. The world blurred as he crashed into a lower chamber, rolling against cold stone. He groaned, pushing himself up. Where was Celara? The walls around him pulsed with a dim, eerie glow. Strange symbols were etched into the stone, whispering in a language he didn't understand. This wasn't just a ruin. It was alive. A voice echoed through the chamber. Not Asmara's. Not Celara's. Something older. Something watching. Ethan's pulse pounded. Yeah, this is definitely a trap. Celara's trial. Above, Celara landed in another section of the labyrinth, rolling to her feet. She cursed under her breath. Ethan was gone, separated by the twisting corridors. Asmara's voice echoed from the walls. You always fought alone, Celara. That is why the curse remains. Celara ignored her. She had no time for riddles. Her curse was spreading. The dark energy had climbed past her elbow, pulsing under her skin like poison. She had to end this. A figure emerged ahead, one of the shadow creatures. But this one was different. It wasn't a monster. It was a reflection of herself. Celara's eyes narrowed. A trick. The reflection moved, mirroring her stance perfectly. Celara lunged, and so did her copy. Their blades clashed, sending a wave of force through the chamber. Every strike she made, her shadow matched. Every movement, copied. Celara gritted her teeth. She couldn't win like this. Ethan's choice. Meanwhile, Ethan stumbled through the maze, his flashlight barely piercing the darkness. The whispers grew louder. Then, he saw something impossible. A figure stood in the distance. It was him. A perfect copy. Same face, same clothes, but the eyes were hollow, empty. The shadow Ethan smirked. You don't belong here. Ethan fired his blaster. This time, the shot connected. The copy staggered back, but it didn't disappear. Instead, it laughed. You are weak. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't understand magic, curses, or ancient ruins. But he knew one thing. If this place was about trust, if Celara's curse was about learning to rely on someone else, then she needed him. He turned and ran toward the heart of the labyrinth. Breaking the curse. Celara was losing. Her reflection fought without hesitation, without doubt. And that was the difference. Celara had always fought alone. Then, a voice. Celara. She turned. Ethan was there, standing at the edge of the chamber. For the first time, her copy hesitated. Celara understood. She had to trust. Instead of attacking, she dropped her sword. Her reflection's eyes widened. It hesitated, and that was enough. The curse shattered like glass. The energy surrounding her cracked, breaking apart. Celara took a deep breath. For the first time in centuries, she was free. Asmara's voice whispered through the fading shadows. You were never cursed, sister. You were just afraid. The ruins trembled. The labyrinth collapsed. Ethan rushed to Celara's side. We need to go. Celara stared at her hands. The darkness was gone. The curse was gone. She looked at Ethan. Then she took his hand. Together, they ran. The final betrayal. The ruins of Nithra were collapsing. The ancient walls cracked. The air trembled, and the shadows that once held the curse dissolved into the void. Ethan Carter didn't have time to process what had just happened. One moment, he was trapped in an ancient labyrinth. The next, Solara had shattered her own curse. Now, they were running for their lives. Escape from the ruins. The ground beneath them shook violently as Ethan and Solara sprinted through the crumbling halls. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling, forcing them to dodge falling stone pillars and jagged spikes that erupted from the walls. If you have an escape plan, now would be a great time to use it, Ethan shouted over the deafening noise. Solara didn't slow down. Follow me. She took a sharp turn, leading them down a dark corridor. Ethan barely managed to keep up as they reached an enormous stone door at the end. Solara slammed her hand against a glowing panel, and the entire structure shuddered as the door slowly began to open. A strong gust of wind hit them, and Ethan's eyes widened as he saw what was on the other side. A sheer drop. Below them, an endless pit of swirling darkness stretched deep into the planet's core. Ethan took an uneasy step back. Please tell me we're not jumping." Solara smirked. "Of course not." Then she whistled. A second later, a roar echoed from above. Her starfighter. The sleek black ship dove into view, its thrusters flaring as it hovered just outside the cliff. The ship's hatch opened. Solara turned to Ethan. "Jump. I hate this plan." "Then fall." Ethan cursed under his breath, took a running start, and leaped. For a terrifying moment, he was weightless, the darkness below rushing up to swallow him. Then he crashed into the open hatch, rolling onto the cold metal floor. Solara landed gracefully behind him, sealing the hatch. "You scream too much, human." Ethan groaned. "And you enjoy watching me suffer." Solara smirked, but before she could reply, the ship's alarms blared. Betrayal from the stars. Solara took the pilot's seat and pulled the ship into the sky. As they broke through the clouds, Ethan finally saw what was waiting for them. A fleet of warships. The Andromeda warlords. At the center of the fleet was the flagship of Commander Varric, the man who had been hunting Solara for years. And standing at the edge of the enemy's lead ship, looking down at them with a triumphant smirk, Queen Azmara. Solara's hands tightened around the controls. "I should have known." Ethan's stomach dropped. "She sold us out." Azmara's voice came through the ship's comms, smooth as silk. "Oh, Solara, did you really think I would let you leave so easily?" Solara's jaw clenched. "You used me." Azmara chuckled. "I gave you what you wanted, your freedom. In return, I made a deal with the warlords." Ethan's heart pounded. "What deal?" Azmara's eyes gleamed. "You." Ethan went cold. "What?" Azmara's voice was calm, almost amused. "They don't care about Solara anymore. They want the human who broke her curse. They'd want to know why." Asterisk. Ethan felt every hair on his body rise. They weren't after Solara. They were after him. "Surrender now," Azmara continued, "and no one gets hurt." Solara's grip on the controls tightened. Ethan turned to her. "So, how screwed are we?" Solara's eyes burned with fury. "We fight. The Pirate Queen's last stand." Without warning, Solara threw the ship into high gear. The engines roared as they barreled toward the fleet. The enemy warships immediately opened fire, plasma cannons lighting up the sky. Solara twisted the ship through impossible maneuvers, dodging every blast with precision only a legend could pull off. Ethan, gripping the co-pilot seat for dear life, shouted, "What's the plan?" Solara's smirk returned. "Survive." She pulled a sharp turn, heading straight toward the warship holding Azmara. Ethan's eyes widened. "Are we seriously attacking the flagship?" "No." Solara flipped a switch. "We're crashing into it." the Pirate Queen's rebirth. The sky burned with plasma fire. The air was thick with the roar of thrusters and the deafening blasts of warship cannons. The final battle had begun. Silura Xyra, the Pirate Queen, gripped the controls of her starfighter, her violet eyes locked on the flagship of Queen Asmara. Ethan Carter, sitting beside her, braced himself. They were flying straight into the enemy's heart. "You are actually insane," Ethan muttered. "We're going to die." Silura smirked. "Then let's make it spectacular." With a final push, she sent the ship into a nosedive. The crash into the throne. The enemy warships fired everything they had. Torpedoes, plasma cannons, railguns. But Silura was too fast, too unpredictable. With a final burst of speed, she piloted the ship straight through the flagship's outer shields, twisting at the last moment to crash land directly into the warship's command deck. Boom! The ship's metal skeleton screamed, explosions bursting through the impact zone. The force of the crash threw Ethan and Silura forward, slamming them against their seats. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the cockpit cracked open. Silura stepped out like a ghost rising from the ashes. Smoke curled around her silhouette, her silver armor gleaming under the flickering lights. The warlord guards stood frozen. They had expected a wreck, not a warrior. Silura took a slow step forward, then another. She dropped her blade into her hand. "Anyone who does not wish to die, leave now." The guards hesitated, then ran. The final confrontation. At the far end of the throne room, Queen Asmara stood waiting. She was calm, composed, and entirely unshaken. She had expected this. Ethan staggered out of the wreckage, coughing. "She really does love making an entrance, huh?" Asmara chuckled. "She always did." Silura's blade gleamed as she pointed it at Asmara. "You betrayed me." Asmara tilted her head. "I freed you. For a price." Asmara sighed. "You still don't understand, do you? The warlords never wanted me. They never even wanted you. They wanted the human." She turned her silver eyes toward Ethan. "And I gave him to them." Ethan's pulse pounded. A dozen warlord guards appeared from the shadows, their weapons trained on him. Silura's eyes darkened. Asmara had never been after her. She had been after Ethan the whole time. The choice that changed everything. Asmara extended a hand. "Come with me, Ethan. If you surrender, I will spare her life." Silura's jaw clenched. She knew this game. She had played it before. Sacrifice one to save the other. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his temples. "So let me get this straight. I walk away, and she gets to live." Asmara smiled. "Yes." Silura didn't wait. She lunged. Her sword met Asmara's in an explosion of sparks. The two queens clashed, their movements precise, deadly. Two warriors who had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Ethan watched as lightning-fast strikes filled the room. They moved too fast for him to follow, their weapons blurring into streaks of silver and fire. Then, Asmara slipped. It was small, a single misstep, but it was enough. Silura struck. Her blade sank into Asmara's chest. Asmara staggered back. She touched the wound in disbelief, silver blood dripping from her fingers. For the first time, fear entered her eyes. She had lost. The birth of a new legend. Silura pulled her blade free, stepping back as Asmara collapsed to her knees. The Shadow Queen trembled, her power fading. Her reign was over. She lifted her gaze to Silura one last time. "And what will you do now, sister?" Silura exhaled. She had spent centuries fighting, running, ruling by fear. She had thought power would free her. But in the end, it was trust. She turned to Ethan. "We leave. Together." Ethan blinked. "Wait. Really? No dramatic speech?" "No. I will rule the galaxy." Silura smirked. That was the old me. She turned to the warlord guards. "Go. They did not hesitate. With Asmara defeated, they no longer had a leader. They'd vanished into the corridors, leaving the throne room in silence. Silera turned to Ethan. "Let's go home." Ethan hesitated. Where exactly is home?" Silera smiled. "Wherever we choose." Together, they stepped back onto their ship. As they left the ruined flagship behind, a new legend was born. The legend of the pirate queen who defied fate, and the human who changed the stars. The end.